Welcome to the Evening Review. My name is Klage. This evening we're joined in studio by Economist Mally Likukela. But before we go into the interview, have a look at the front page. Evening and welcome back to the Evening Review.
Thank you. Good to be back here.
Recently, there was information circulating that the IMF loan that Namibia recently got as part of its fighting COVID-19 may have conditionalities attached to it. This, from what has been seen, includes, not employing new people and a bit of austerity measures that are tied to it. What can one make of its authenticity, and if it is indeed authentic, what do you make of what is contained therein?
No, thank you very much for that question. Actually, this conditionality does not surprise me at all. You see, the IMF's operation in terms of what they expect when they provide this assistance is well documented. And if you recall, in our last discussions, I indicated that in as much as it's an exciting news that the IMF will give us some relief, we shouldn't forget that the IMF never gave money without conditions. Now, these conditions, it's to safeguard the IMF's interest. But history have shown how these conditions have caused more devastation in various countries, more devastation than what they were intended for. So when this talks about getting money from the IMF started, one of the things that was really prominent for me, which I wanted our government to put it out there, was the conditions attached. And I'm not so sure if you've read, and I'm sure you've read the statement about the new money now. Towards the end there, in the press statement, the IMF says the conditions or economic reforms is essential. That statement tells you that there is a big document detailing what those conditions are, which is still coming. And it has to come as part of this package. So we have to now, as a country, look at those conditions before we say we need this money, because experience have taught us, and literature is out there, how these conditions have caused devastation in various countries. So for me, I was not surprised, but I'm just concerned with the fact that government is not talking more about these things to sensitize the nation about these conditions.
The IMF loan issue, with government now having approached the IMF for the first time, and given the fiscal position of government, are there other lenders that would be open to borrowing money to Namibia, looking at where we are?
Yeah, actually, we could have borrowed money. There are a lot of lenders that could still give money to Namibia. You have to understand that Namibia's financial sector or the fiscal position have been well managed for some time now, which made us to be amongst those countries which lenders would really love to give money. The unfortunate part of it is that the IMF appears to us as a very good lender with very low terms. But within those terms, the conditions are the one that will bring us more trouble if we don't study those so well. Look, the GIPF is one of the assets, is one of the corporations that is still rated by even international rating agencies, one of the best. You have your NamPower. You have other corporations that, again, still receives a good rating from international rating agencies. This puts our government in a better position to still expand our nets. But the fact that we went to the IMF simply because everybody's running there and they come across as good lenders. But the problem is the condition. If I can just quickly just look at, explain these conditions, just maybe for our viewers. Look, each and every year, the IMF sends a mission to Namibia to come and do an assessment. And for the past 5 years, the IMF's report have always come out with 4 or 5 things that they want the government to reform. They want us to manage the wage bill. They want us to sell some of the parastatals, some of the SOEs. They want us to deal with they've proposed some recommendation on how to deal with the wage bill, including not to employ new people, freezing positions. They come across, they tell us to look at our balance of payment. Now, if you look at these things, in a way they are deflationary, in a way they suppress growth. Yeah. Now, if they suppress growth, it means that you are kept in a position where the only hope to get additional fiscal space is with them. So for the past 5 years, I've been saying the same song. So I will not be surprised if part of the conditions that will come with this money reflect those things. And I can assure you, if you go back to the 5 reports of the IMF, these are quite prominent. And they are saying, you are not going to get out of this economic mess if you don't deal with this. But okay, fine, we're going to give you money. But don't forget what we told you. So these are the things. Now, these recommendations are good, but they have implications. If you are going to sell a parastatals, where are those people going to go? The employment, the unemployment that you're going to create. If you are going to freeze employment in government is the largest employer. Where are you going to take all these thousands and thousands that are getting on the streets every year from our universities? Now, the totality of all these conditions for a Namibian economy, it could be disastrous, but very good for the IMF because they assure and guarantee their money. So that is where my concern really is. In as much as we needed money so fast, there are other various opportunities or options that we could have explored. And my biggest issue with all this, the way the things are turning out, is the fact that we are guided by some of the outdated economic theories that we seem to still hanging on to. Yeah. Now, if maybe I can put this into context to say, okay, what is the difference? Why can't we print our own money? Somebody will tell you that if we print our own money, it's going to create inflation. That's a very old and outdated economic theory. Because if we can get the money from the IMF, it's the same money, we're going to use it here, but it does not create inflation. How come our own money that we print create inflation? So you can look at this thing and say, look, we must interrogate and challenge some of this thinking. The reason we can't print our own money is because of the peg that we're trying to protect. And we are ready to defend the peg, even at the expense of our own people. So we need to challenge some of these things because the time has come now Now we are going to lock ourselves into this 270 million, whereas we could have taken other options. So my concern really is we need to have some of these serious conversations, because they really affect the future of this nation.
Recently, coupled with the IMF loan, was that there was also another portion of money that was given by the AFDB. Now, if you look at the trend of borrowing in the last 5 or 6 years, does this seem to suggest that we're in a cycle of perpetual borrowing?
Yes, I have cautioned this several years ago to say that the rate at which we are taking up debt is not sustainable, because it is not translating into any economic growth. We've just signed that loan from Africa Development Bank. We got another money from Germany, and this money. Now, in a span of 1 year, in a span of 12 months, we have taken up all this debt, and yet we can't account for the previous debts that we have taken to show that this is what we have used it, and it has helped us to grow the economy so that we are able to sustain the repayment. The Euro bond that is due now, and it's in the public domain, government is talking to GIPF to help them out. What does that tell you? It tells you that somehow, somewhere in the system, there is a point where we need to say, okay, are we at the point where we can honor our financial obligation? Yes, we have GIPF with the billions. They can bail us out. But the savers who have put all their life saving in GIPF, are they informed about those things? In as much as we can speak very fancy big words about the financial markets, the teacher in the north just want to be assured that when he retires, he still have his money. But that is the money that we are going to put as a bond for the Euro bond, of which the simple teacher in the village have got no idea when and why it was taken. So all I'm just saying is, if we are going to get out of this debt trap, which we are, 76% of GDP in debt is a trap already. It will take Namibia more than 10 years to make a dent of that, because the engine of growth have completely shut down. So my recommendation is to say, let's rally everyone that is affected. Let's have a conversation so that everyone can bring their suggestion and help to get the nation out of this. Because trust me, for the past 5 years, we've been surviving on debt. We haven't been able to grow anything at all. So that was even before COVID. Now, with COVID, I don't know how the situation will look like, but yeah.
There's another issue I want to move on to another aspect of government's fiscal policy, and that relates now to the recent announcement that the second round of fishing quotas that government earmarks to want to sell. Do you think enough has been learned to meet the targets? You remember the last time they only raised 8.1 million from a projected 500 million.
Yeah, you see, with the issue of fishing quotas, or the fishing sector at large, have got many challenges. And I've raised this point before to say that the fishing sector, from government's perspective, suffers from two main challenges. Number one, governance. Number two, targeting. Remember, when these development quotas, how do they call them, government objective, the objectivity in this objective is not there, because the government objective is to lift the poorest of the poorest up through these quotas. But if you read the news today, who is fighting for the millions? The chiefs. You've never heard of a poorest of the poorest fighting for a cent from those, which means they are excluded completely. The reason why government can't get it right is because the assessment to say whether the objective have been met is not there. You can't tell me that when you give a chief somewhere in the rural area 20 million, you have met the objective. That's not the objective. The objective is to lift the poorest of the poor, the marginalized. If you can tell me that 2 million went to the marginalized, then I can tell you, now we can talk. The reason why government will not get it right is because the objectivity in the objective is not there. It has been politicized to the fact that you hear this youth wing is fighting for the shares there. this is not the objective of the fishing quotas. It's very clear. It is to lift the poorest of the poor, bring them up into economic mainstream. You can't tell me that me as a chief, I'm one of those. Yes, I can benefit from that. Yes, the minister's son can benefit one or the other, but there should not be the focus. But the focus now is on those big shots who are fighting for these quotas, and they want the quotas to be reissued again so that they can try their luck again. But then you find that the objectivity, which is supposed to be the driving force, is not there. So two things: governance. There's no governance in this whole thing, because no one can really stand and be accountable or to take responsibility of the mistakes. The last round it gave us 6 million, or how much was that?
8.1 million.
8.1 million. Nobody took responsible for it. That's governance. It lacks governance. Now, targeting. You are targeting, you are availing these opportunities to people that already have opportunities. There are many ways that you can bring in the poorest of the poor into the mainstream together with those that have, but not to a point where those that have controls those that do not have. And if all these things will continue unaddressed, we are going to have a perpetual cycle of those that have trying to protect the richest against this, because these will have to rise up at some point.
Of course.
So we must be mindful of the fact that, yes, today you can have all this because you are in the position of authority. You can make policies that favors you. But remember, you are not going to live happily with all your riches as long as we have got more people below the poverty line.
Thank you very much for joining us on the Evening Review.
Oh, it's always a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in. Please do stay tuned for the weather. Good night.